budget.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Well,
Fisher.
motion is in order, I move that we go to committee.
Second.
Motion is second to approve Nitty Sports Construction at the, bid price of $87,700. And, would that include, your motion include working with them for the lighting, or would?
Yes, and I have another question also.
Yeah.
I guess we would have to do the, the lighting on a separate bid, is that my understanding? You have to bid that again, is that the process?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
One of our committee members, Jeff Brewer, is the electrical engineer with Tri-County. He would be agreeable to heading up that project. We would, of course, let you all know what we have found. As far as a lighting company, I've already been working on that.
Okay.
And I feel like, and he feels like that, the amount, which is $42,100 left for lighting, we would like to be able to pursue that, in order to do it all at the same time. From all that I've learned, it's much, less expensive to do it all at the same time than to try to do it later. So we're asking that you allow us to pursue that.
If it can, is there's an option too, the 3-inch asphalt, so we're not doing that?
We're not doing
No,
that.
we're doing it 1.5.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's fine if the board wishes to do that. I think what you're saying is to, approve the bid of $87,700 from Nitty for just the construction of the courts, and that all of the other bids for lighting exceed the budget for lighting. And so the tennis committee is gonna come back with a recommendation to the board on how to handle lighting.
Right.
Does that sound right?
That sounds good.
And of course, the tennis committee's free to work with Nitty or anybody else they want to on what you're gonna do for the lighting.
Right, and from what I've been told from speaking to the tennis court companies, it's better to do it all at the same time.
Sure.
Much cheaper.
The expense on the lighting that will be paid for this, would have to come out to us, correct?
Anything above the $87,700 would have to come back. And the only thing to be careful of course, is you do wanna do it all at the same time, but now Nitty doesn't have to honor this bid forever, so you gotta kind of move
Right,
quickly to
right,
figure out
right.
what we're
Right.
gonna do.
Absolutely.
Okay, any further discussion? Questions? I have a motion and a second to approve the Nitty, construction bid of $87,700. All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. White, appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
And, I'm quite sure we'll get the lighting straightened out
Thank you.
in due time, okay? All right, moving on down we have consideration of proposal for Johnson and Blanton to provide consulting services for Madison County. I'll turn that over to, Ms. Kaufman, if you would like to address that.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is related to discussion that we had a couple meetings ago about the toll roads that the governor just signed into law, and looking at opportunities of trying to maybe bring that into Madison County. It's up in the air right now of where that's actually going to go. And so we were thinking about employing the services of Johnson and Blanton to help us in looking at that road. So Derek is here tonight. Derek, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Come on, introduce yourself.
And Ed,
Sure will.
Dean is in the background there. Ed.
I can never be in the background, I'm too big for that.
Well, Ed, you've had time working with them, and so we'd like to.
I will, as soon as he get, we can't fit at the same place at the same time.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much for letting me be here. My name is Derek McGee, as mentioned, and Brian, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. So I work for a firm called Johnson and Blanton in Tallahassee, and we provide statewide lobby representation. And in regards to being here, so our firm has been in existence since 1994. John Johnson, who is the original founder and still the managing partner of our firm, I joined the firm almost 5 years ago. Prior to that, I did 13 years in state government, starting under Governor Bush, including under Governor Scott. And so My background and focus is a lot on economic development and transportation, K-12 education, and then criminal justice, mainly in the reentry arena. And so prior to joining Governor Scott's office, leaving Governor Scott's office, I was his director of legislative affairs, so I handled all of his public policy and budget. But prior to that, I served as the chief of staff and interim director of the Department of Economic Opportunity. So I've done many years in economic development, and again, many years in state government. And one thing you learn in state government is you don't burn bridges, because it's all cyclical. And so I've been fortunate to just complete my 18th session before the legislature. And in regards to the legislation at hand, Senate Bill 7068, it was not a bill that I personally introduced, but I was monitoring and working on it on behalf of a few other parties and working with the Department of Transportation. So this was the #1 priority of Senate President Bill Galvano to create 3 multi-purpose corridors. The one as relates to this area is the Suncoast Corridor, which is supposed to be from Citrus County to Jefferson County. And the way in which it's set up is there's 3 multi-purpose corridors the law requires, and the work has to begin by December 31st of 2022 and conclude by December 31st of 2030. So that's 8 years to complete 3 corridors simultaneously. There are monies that have been set aside in that regard, but also what it lays out is each corridor has to create a task force. And that task force consists of state agency personnel, but also each county that would be impacted by that corridor has to have a seat on there. So Madison County would have a seat on that task force. The law also requires that any impacted county would be required to host a public meeting. So Madison County will be allowed to have a public meeting where the community of Madison County can come in and speak to any concerns, any support for the corridor. There have been, according to DOT conversations I've had with them at high levels, there have been some pushback already been received by Citrus County. They got some by Jefferson County where they've been balking at not wanting it. I will tell you that this is a great opportunity for economic development, great opportunity for many other things that could take place. Again, this is a very aggressive agenda. You're talking about 8 years and upwards of $2.5 million of work that's being done. The law again mentions that it'll be open for traffic by December 31st of 2030. So a lot taking place. And I believe that Madison County is positioned well. Having worked in the governor's office and maintained relationships, I still have connections now with this current administration. I've had at least 1 or 2 conversations with them at high level, kind of just mentioning, asking the question of if another county that was near Jefferson County had interest in being the recipient of where it ended, would they be amenable to that? They're committed to seeing this to the end. And if Jefferson County is not willing to have it, there's one very close to Jefferson County, i.e. Madison, for example, they would entertain that. And that could either be done through amending of the legislation or getting close enough to Jefferson County where nobody would balk at the intent of the law not being fulfilled. I am very comfortable and confident that if Madison County were to proceed with wanting to have those conversations, what I'll propose to the room is our firm is duly qualified to help in that regard. On the back end, I would recommend that they need, more likely Brian coming to Tallahassee, we're having some meetings with the Secretary of DOT, meetings with the Governor's Office. The Secretary, I forgot to mention that, he has final say on who gets appointed to the task force. All appointments have to be done by August 1st of this year. I talked to DOT and I asked them how it would play out. What they're going to do is they're really going to ask the impacted counties to recommend someone to represent their county. And I would say that I think the county administrator would serve well in that regard. But the most important thing is it has to be someone who has the confidence of their county, represent the county well, can also relate back to the county what's going on. It's a very aggressive assignment for the task force. But the seats on there are very, very important because the ultimate goal is to make sure that Florida benefits from this. Studies have been done, there's a major impact happening on I-10 and I-75 and US 19. And so Senate President's legacy was to be able to allow for more infrastructure. Florida is now the third largest state as we know, and our infrastructure has not kept up. And so that was the vision behind this. And Mr. Chair, I'm honored to be here, happy to take any questions. I'll defer to Ed if that's how your order is, and I'll be here to answer any questions as you see fit, sir.
Come forward.
Good evening. Before I let you answer any questions, I want to kind of give you a little bit more testimony on to Derek, who he is, and actually how I came to know One of the things that I think that he omitted from his background is he's indeed a lobbyist by trade from 9 to 5, if you will, but he's also the senior pastor of his own church in Tallahassee. The Bible-based, is it Methodist or?
Bible-based church.
Right, okay, it's a Bible-based church. It's a fledgling church in Tallahassee. And in fact, there's several people that I went to school with back in the early 90s that have sing his praises. Interesting enough, last year, how I met there initially was I had gone to Commissioner Moore, and I had asked him about retaining a lobbyist for Greenville to get us what we would call in DC plus up, basically some appropriation money. And at the time, Commissioner Moore turned me over to Chris Dubin, who many of you are familiar with. Well, Chris kind of more or less punted on the idea because, quite frankly, we couldn't pay him, I guess, what he was worth to do individual lobbying. A lot of times people get confused with when you have a consortium lobbyist that consortium lobbyist does lobbying for individual tailored issues like this issue here. It just doesn't happen. A lot of times those consortium lobbyists are actually afraid to tell you this. And so Chris and I had good conversations because for those of you who do not know, my background, I was a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. for almost 20 years. And so this is kind of my bailiwick in my area. And so he turned me on to Derek. And in a nutshell, his firm basically commenced to doing a lot of pro bono work for Greenville. And we were very successful in those efforts. So one of the things that y'all just recently heard about was about the Springs program. Well, Derek made sure that I had kind of unfettered access, and it landed Greenville about $2.7 million from the Springs grant, and that's for phase 1. Phase 2 that we go back for and ask for this year is another 1.5, which will bring us up to $4.2 million. So his bona fides are solidified in my eyes. And so, to be quite frank with you, many of you have heard or seen in the newspaper about some of the things that Greenville has done. Well, I wanted the county to be able to share in some of the things that we're doing down here by giving you access to someone who's helped me to kind of go through this process. I felt like it was only fair, basically, because when I called